Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial which will explain two parts of the Cambridge Proficiency in English writing exam paper. Specifically, what does the paper entail? What are you meant to write about? Which tone of voice are you meant to be using? How much time do you have? And how is this assessed? Well, let's get started. Okay, so how many parts are there? There are two, and you have 90 minutes in which to write two separate entries. One is compulsory, that is the first part. You have to do it, you have no choice. And in part two, there's a choice of 5 different topics. These range from, for example, essays, articles, letters, reviews, reports, and thus the tone of voice will differ as well. And the 2 parts are equally weighted, so they're each worth 50% of the final mark. Okay, what does part 1 involve? Well, it's a compulsory essay and it's a discursive essay. I'll show you an example in a moment. And the input material is that you read 2 texts, which are approximately 100 words each, and then you're meant to write, let's say, roughly 260 words on average about these 2 texts. Okay, I'm going to skip forward because I'd like to show you what this actually looks like. Okay, part 1. Again, you have 2 texts of about 100 words each, and you're meant to write about 260 words. The idea is that you are summarizing and evaluating the main points, the key points from each of these texts. You're meant to use your own words as much as possible and include your own ideas regarding the subject matter. So the first text reads, "Shifting sounds, behavioral change." Nowadays, in some cultures, there may often be confusion between generations about what is acceptable behavior in certain situations. Older people sometimes complain, for example, about the real or imagined rudeness of others, such as in the use of electronic devices in public places. However, the younger generation do not regard electronic communication as intrusive, but rather as fundamental to their way of life. Only increased mutual understanding is likely to resolve potential conflict or confusion in any society. In this case, as in all others, it pays to be aware of other people's points of view. Okay, so what does the text actually put forth in terms of the main points? The topic sentence reads, confusion between generations. What is acceptable behavior in public or in certain situations? So it sort of juxtaposes, it compares older people who may find some behaviors rude and younger people who may not find some behaviors, for example, electronic device usage, rude. It concludes by stating that we need to better understand each other in order to avoid conflict or confusion. Okay, so being aware of other people's points of view is essential. Now we've got another text. Follow my leader. Should we always aim to do what society expects of us? No. What society needs is individuality. Worrying about what other people think inhibits enthusiasm and creativity. Nothing new is ever achieved by conforming to expected social norms. This is not only true for society's innovators. Everybody needs a strong sense of their own worth as an individual. This is essential for psychological well-being and the ability to function effectively in one's personal and professional life. Paying too much attention to society's conventions can be counterproductive in these and other ways. All right, so what we see is that there is indeed some overlap in that both texts are dealing with similar themes. However, they put forth different ideas. If we summarize this text, well, the author of the text is putting forth the notion that We need to follow our own gut instinct, be individuals, um, and march to the beat of our own drum, to use a phrase in English. That this is actually, important not only for our own mental health, psychological well-being, but for effective functioning in life. Okay, now the idea here is that you're meant to summarize each text and then include your own ideas in the answer. What is Cambridge looking for here? Well, they're looking for a number of higher order writing skills, one of which is the ability to summarize, to glean, to come up with the main points of each text. But the task here also involves paraphrasing. That is, being able to use your own words. Too much lifting, that is, too much copying directly from the original text, will reduce the points attributed to your writing. Okay, so main points, well, we've said it. Basically, there are different ways that people might view etiquette, especially in public, especially in regards to electronic devices. We, as humankind, need to understand each other's points of view in order to live effectively together. Individuality is key, according to text 2. Following one's own lead and not worrying or being overly concerned with what society thinks or adhering to conventions is key. We need to follow our own lead. Now, what you notice that I've done here is I've summarized each piece, but I've also paraphrased. Again, part of the test here is to investigate your own level of vocabulary knowledge. So, for example, if you want to paraphrase, you could use phrases like higher levels of, let's say, understanding between peoples will help to bring about resolution to conflict and confusion. I've lifted. Sorry, guys. Let me come up with a different wording. Conflict, disagreement, confusion, chaos, or lack of resolution. Okay, here, let's come up with some synonyms. Let's paraphrase. Everybody needs a strong sense of their own worth as an individual. People must follow their own personal guidance in regards to creativity and personal expression. And then here it reads, paying too much attention to society's conventions can be counterproductive. Well, we could say something like adhering to societal norms might be, let's say, less effective or might be detrimental. Okay, so your essay in 260 words will summarize and paraphrase this piece, summarize and paraphrase this piece, and then in a few sentences outline, your own opinion as the writer, as the author. Okay, so that's part 1. Now, in a separate video, I'm going to show some examples of successful attempts at this task. Great, that's part 1. Let's take a look at part 2. Okay, part 2 involves a choice here. You have some options. You may be given an article, a letter, a report, or a review. And then the last option, that is question 5, deals with having read a particular book. So, for example, I think last year, or 2 years ago, the required text or the compulsory text, the set text, was The Great Gatsby. A book called Brooklyn. Sometimes there's a novella or a short story. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? So the idea is to go to the Cambridge website. It's easily found if you just Google Cambridge Proficiency Set Text and then the year that you're looking for, the current year. Then you'll find which texts have been set for this year. What do you write about these texts? Well, you might write an article, an essay, a letter, a report, or a review. Okay, and how long is this meant to be? This or this. You write one thing here from these choices. Well, this is a little bit longer than the other. It's about 300 words. So if you think, how much writing are you actually doing on the test as a whole? If you're writing about 260 and 300, well, you're writing, let's say, 560 to 600 words maximum, okay, in 90 minutes. Okay, so again, this is part 2. You have options. Let's take a look at a set example. Okay, part 2. Write an answer to one of the questions 2 through 5 in this part. Now here you just see questions 2, 3, 4. We'll take a look at question 5 on the next slide. One option. Oh, this is a review. Nice. This is a report. And here you have an article. The review. A literary magazine is running a series of reviews of books that people enjoyed reading as a child and would recommend for children today. You decide to send in a review in which you describe a book you enjoyed and the attractions it had for you as a child. You should also explain why you feel it remains relevant for children today. Ooh, this is a nice option, especially for those of us that are avid readers. It's a literary magazine, and it's a review, so if one looks at the task, well, you figure the tone of a voice will be somewhat conversational. It's not going to be super formal, right? Okay, here is a report. We can already probably gather that if it's a report, the tone of voice, or what Cambridge is what it's called register, is already going to be more formal, neutral to formal. A jobs fair was recently held in your town for international organizations and companies to promote careers available for young people. You have been asked to write a report of the jobs fair for your college website. So it's a website, it's for the whole organization, institution. So again, the tone of voice will be somewhat formal. You should briefly describe the event, that's the jobs fair, and identify 2 or 3 promotions of particular interest and relevance. You should also evaluate the extent to which such events can open young people's minds to new challenges and career opportunities. There will be some, let's say, opinion in this. It will be slightly subjective because you're evaluating the interest and relevance of these components of the jobs fair. But again, the tone will be somewhat formal. Okay, and lastly, an article. Another magazine. An international travel magazine is running a series of articles on alternatives to traveling by plane. The magazine has invited readers to send in articles briefly describing a memorable long-distance train or bus journey they've made. The article should explain the advantages of traveling a long distance by train or bus, and consider whether, in general, traveling to your destination more slowly may result in a more satisfying travel experience. Okay, so this is also a nice option. Indeed, this is about a journey that you, the author of the piece, has made. Thus, the tone of voice will be rather conversational. It's not going to be super formal. Think for a moment about which one you would choose. The review about a book you read as a child, a report about a careers fair that you visited, or an article about a travel experience. And sometimes my students ask me, well, but where do I get the information for this? For example, this jobs fair. Well, you make it up. Cambridge is, we're not going to check, that is, those who assess writing, your teachers or Cambridge examiners, writing assessors, are not going to check whether the facts are actually true. There's no way to check that. The idea is you have to quickly, because again, you only have 90 minutes, and you need to be able to make a choice rather quickly, and then brainstorm some ideas as to what exactly the content will be. Okay? Okay, so these are questions 2 through 4. There's one more option, and that's the set text, in which you are writing about a book you've read. Let's take a look. Okay, your last option. And what we see here is it a play? Is it a book? I believe it's a play, but in any case, it's Shakespeare in Love. Some of you may know it from having seen the movie, the film. And you've also got, I believe it's a novella. In any case, it's a short, fairly short read. It's science fiction, rather a classic. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which some of you may recognize as having been adapted to a film called Blade Runner. Okay, so you're choosing, let's see, Shakespeare in Love. A broad river divides my lovers. Viola is in love with Will because she admires his poetry. Will is in love with Viola because she inspires his writing. Write an essay for your English language tutor. You should evaluate the extent to which you agree with this judgment of the relationship between Will and Viola, making reference to 2 or 3 particular events in the, it's a screenplay. Write your essay. How long is it going to be? Well, again, it'll be around 300 words. It's going to be very difficult indeed to write about this if you've not actually read the screenplay. So again, this is why you need to check. If you're interested in option 5, the set text option, you need to check what Cambridge has assigned for that year's test material. Option B. Okay, and again, you're writing one of these. So it's either A or B. The English book club to which you belong has asked members to write reports on books with interesting titles. You decide to write about Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? You should briefly describe the story, explain the significance of the title, and assess how far the title successfully conveys what the story is about. Write your report. So both of these have a fairly neutral to formal tone of voice or register. Again, this is an essay. Who is the target reader? Your teacher, your English teacher. Okay, so formal academic style. Here, it's a report, and it's a book club. So again, the tone of voice will be neutral to formal academic style. All right. I hope that serves to explain the nature. Oh, and let's talk briefly about how you're assessed. Okay. Cambridge will look at 4 things, 4 subscale elements in your writing. The first one of them, they're equally important. Okay, so in total, you're allotted 20 points for each piece. And for each, you're allotted, again, 4 divided by into 20 is 5 points each. So content is worth 5 points. Communicative achievement is worth 5 points. Organization is worth 5 points. And language is worth 5 points. Content focuses on how well the candidate has fulfilled the task. In other words, if they have done what they were asked to do. Basically, did you, as the author, answer the question? Sometimes people go way off track and do not answer the question, and then one would lose points for content. Another element is communicative achievement. This focuses on how appropriate the writing is for the task, and whether the candidate has used the appropriate register or tone of voice. So, for example, if you're writing an academic essay, Cambridge, examiners, assessors will be looking for linking words, cohesive devices of an academic nature. That will also perhaps fall into organization, but Let's take another example. Okay, for example, an article. Well, if this is a more conversational style piece, generally one could use more idiomatic language here as well. If you're writing a review of a book that you read as a child, you're allowed to use the word I. You're allowed to use idioms, okay? Things like gut, I had a gut feeling, that didn't ring a bell, this sort of language. Whereas if you're writing a report or, for example, a summary, you're not meant to be using much idiomatic language. Okay, whoops, sorry guys, let's go back. Cool. Okay, so that's communicative achievement, the tone of voice. Then we'll also be looking at organization, the way the candidate puts together the piece of writing. In other words, if it's logical and ordered. We're looking for paragraphs, we're looking for linking words and devices, and that indeed the piece flows logically and readably. The last element is language, that is vocabulary and grammar. Accuracy is important, of course, at this high level of English, and the range. That is, that you're able to use and demonstrate accurately a range of different types of vocabulary. Okay? So again, 5 points for each element, and in such a way your writing is assessed. Well, I hope this explains at least the nature of what the exam paper involves. And then check for other videos that I will recommend which outline example answers. And thanks for watching.